Hello class, hope everybody's doing well. Hope your HTML and CSS coding is, I don't know, not so confusing, I guess. Hopefully you guys are kind of getting on that, figuring things out. Do make sure you ask any questions. If you need to, we can arrange time to meet. We can share our desktops if you want to show me your code, and we can try to figure stuff out. Today I want to talk about some ideas for your final project. Okay, so that means that we're getting ideas to kind of generate a proposal. Okay, so that's the next step that I want you guys to go through, is to come up with a proposal, propose what you want to do for your project. Okay, but before we do that, let's take a look at what that entails. Okay, so what you really want to do is you need to think of what is the objective of your website. Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to share information about traveling? Do you want to share information about cooking? Do you want to persuade people to, I don't know, be vegetarian, visit Norway? What do you want to do? Okay, and think about who is the intended audience of your website. Is it going to be other travelers? Is it going to be travelers of a certain age group? Is it going to be, cooking enthusiasts? And you really want to target them and design your website for those people in mind. Okay, choosing your fonts carefully, your colors carefully. If it's intended for children, then you probably tend towards certain types of colors, certain types of fonts. If it's for business people, professional looking and clean and sleek, and I don't know. So keep those things in mind when you are deciding. Okay, and then you can start to think about what are the different parts of your website. So first of all, listing off what are the different pages that you need. I'm going to need an about page. I'm going to need a home page. I'm going to need a page that talks about different shoes. I need a page that talks about shirts. I need a whatever. Start listing the different pages that you're going to need, and keeping in mind that your final project requires a minimum of 5 pages. Okay. Usually when people go about the project, it ends up being more than 5 pages, but the general average, I would say, is somewhere between 5 and 10 pages people usually make, depending on what they're doing. Okay, so I just wanted to look at a few websites together, because what a lot of people do is they tend to base their projects on other things, which is a good idea, because it kind of gives you ideas of how people are making websites and whatnot. So a really good thing to do is to look at some of the previous student examples. If you don't remember where those are, just go to computerscience.johncabot.edu. Okay? And in there, in the top, I think you can search for class portfolios, I think that is, and you can see what other students have made in the past. Perhaps I'll post a link to that somewhere on Moodle. But anyways, we can also look at some more professional websites. Okay, so when you're looking at website, you'll notice that there's usually a general theme that kind of governs the whole site as a whole. So we'll take a look at, for example, the Dell website. I have a link here. This might be a very old link, so let's see what happens here. Let's copy, paste that somewhere in here. So here's the Dell website. It's not exactly the home page, but a page inside the home page. And just take a quick look at the different things that we see here. So we have a navigation bar up here. Looks like we have some sort of header up here which has their logo, a search bar, and some things there. And then going down here, this would be the main content, and all the way down, having their footer down here. Okay, and what I mean by having a common theme is that if I go to different parts of their page, so this is the page that shows these XPS laptops. Let's go to like a different one, like thin laptops. You'll notice that a lot stays the same. The only thing that really changes is the content. So I still have the same header up at the top. I still have the same navigation bar, and just this center part kind of changes. And if I go all the way down, it seems like the footer remains the same too. So there's a lot of repeating items in a website, and that's important to kind of have consistency in the website. So keep that in mind when you're making your projects, that you don't want like things to be completely different from one page to the next. What ends up happening if you make things too different is it almost seems like when people are going through your website, it's like they're jumping to like a completely separate website, which is not what you want. You want to give people the feeling that they are still in the same website, just on a different page. Okay, so you can also see the size of the heading ones, right? So this was the heading one. When they had the XPS laptops, it was the same size, same heading one. Okay, how do I know this is heading one? Really, I'm just kind of assuming. But if you want to know what things are, let me just show you a really cool trick. Now, I already showed you the trick that when you right-click, you can view page source, right? And this will give you all the HTML that's involved in this web page. You can see how nice their indentation is and whatnot. So, and you can see how many divs there are in here, and their lack of comments, which is not very good practice, because if they were to collaborate on this, nobody would actually know what they're actually doing. Okay, so you can actually see that that might not be so useful. That might be to just give you an indication, but I'll show you another thing that might be useful to you. Is that when you look on a web page and you're like, what is that? How do they do that thing right there? What you can do is you can actually just right click on that thing. So this heading right here, I want to know what kind of heading that is. And I'm going to go down to an inspect element. And I'm using Firefox right now, and I believe Chrome has something very similar, and probably Edge, Safari might have something very similar as well, but I've never really used those. But when you inspect the element, it shows you exactly what we're dealing with. So, for example, here, let's see, if I put my mouse on here, you can see that it actually highlights on the page, right? It's actually made of many different things, right? All in there. It's all inside like a huge div, bunch of divs. Okay. Until I get up the top there, you can see this is a div class, and then there's some sort of message bar. You can see it highlighted at the top up here. I put my mouse on top of it. Anyways, going back to that one that I tried to look at, you can see in fact it is an H1. Okay, and you can see how they've actually styled it. Okay, so you can actually see that it's a 3.6 REM, so that looks like the font size, the positioning, and the different CSS that's involved in that, in styling that H1. And it is kind of complex, but you kind of get an idea what they're doing, line height, etc. And what's really nice about this is you can actually see what it looks like if you take out any of the CSS. So right now they use this line height 1.2. If I take that out, what does it look like? You can kind of see it moves slightly up here, so changing the line height will kind of change things slightly. Okay, let's see what happens if I take off the font weight. Okay, so you can see how it used to be kind of a fat font, and then they kind of change it there. So these options are kind of cool to kind of see what's going on, and you can actually do this in your own web page as well too. Like when you're coding and you want to see what things look like by turning them on and off. You can go ahead and do that in your own web page and kind of figure out what's going on with your web pages. Okay, so that might be kind of useful too. Anyways, so checking out websites, right? So having a common theme would mean having one CSS file. So in my CSS file, I would probably say, okay, I have a div ID header and it's styled in this way. Style all my H1 in this way. Style all links to be white. Style font to be sans serif. And you can see that that same thing has been applied to all the different web pages, right? I have this exact same H1 there, have the exact same white links there, so one CSS governing all of my pages, okay? And then talking about cascading, you might have other ones that kind of tweak little things here and there, okay? You might want to take a look at some other web pages. Like here, I just listed a bunch that usually in class I kind of look at with students. I'm not going to go through all of them, but kind of leave it up to you to kind of look at them. I will kind of talk through a couple of these with you. So for example, just looking at the John Cabot web page, I can kind of describe to you what kind of things are involved. So up here you can see that I have some sort of header that has like the John Cabot banner, has some links up here, and then your typical navigation bar. Okay, almost all websites have some sort of navigation bar that no matter where you go in the website, that navigation bar still remains there all the same. Okay, so probably a div that contains that first part. Right. The first div might even contain like all of that, this, and the navigation bar. That might not be up to you. This whole white section, that first section might be all in one div, one header div. Some people like to put their navigation inside their header div. Some people like it separate from their header div. That's kind of up to you. So the next thing here is probably another div that has this picture slider thing. And then we have another div here, which probably is just a list of images. Let's see what happens on the resize. So you can see that they're probably working with a percentage here. So it might be something like 25% until I get to this, and then they might use a different CSS. And then down here, probably another div, a 3-column. So each column being a separate div, so div, div, and div inside one container div. So maybe this whole white section is a big container div. And then down here, probably another div for the features, and then another div down here, and another div for the footer. Okay? Let's look at the Coca-Cola page. Right? So fairly simple home page, just probably a div at the top here to make this kind of introduction. They have a menu here as kind of a slide out. If you want to look into that, just kind of Google slide out menu or something like that. Otherwise, just go with your traditional navigation bar. Here, it looks like we have this white section as a separate div by itself, and inside this white box, it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divs. How do I know they're divs? I don't know. Let's figure that out. Let's right-click and view page source. No, not view page source, sorry. Inspect element. What's that? Back. Right click, inspect element. And I can go down here and I can collapse certain things, and you can see that this is country selector, right? There's a div, you can see it highlighted up there. There's a div, and here's the Europe div, and there's the Eurasia div, and again, if I click on that, you can see the different CSS involved in that, and you can see that these are all floated left. Okay, so they've made 6 divs inside this container div, and each one's float left, float left, float left, float left, float left, float left, so that they kind of buddy up next to each other. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at different websites for ideas. All right, so once you've started listing out the different pages you have, once you've gotten some ideas from other websites on how you want to go about it, the colors you want, things like that, draw it out, see what how you want it to look. Refer back to the design process diagram. So I'll just pull that up. So from now, you should be working towards this section right here, where you're really planning it out, drawing it out, and kind of figuring out what this thing is going to look like. So again, you should have started already doing this, planning out what are the different pages involved, and then here you're moving on to more of what it actually looks like. Once you get that, then you can start coding. Okay, don't start jumping into coding right away. Okay, first have the thing nicely planned out before you get into coding. You'll save yourself a lot of headache and redesign after. A lot of times people kind of jump into this, start playing around, start making their navigation and start putting in their content and everything like that, and then they go, oh, that doesn't look right and that doesn't come out right, and how do I do this? And they start running into a lot of different troubles. If they had just planned things out to begin with, kind of figure out, okay, I need a div for this, I need a div for that, this is what it's going to look like. All this stuff is going to go into a container div, and it's going to be divided into 3 columns using 3 floated divs, things like that. Planning it out before coding, I can't tell you enough, that's going to save you a lot of time, even though I know half of you aren't going to listen to me and just start coding and just, I guess you're going to have to learn the hard way. But also, having said that, I'm sure a lot of you are going to take my advice and you're going to build yourself a really good web page. Okay? Happy project work.